Welcome to the Leadership Lovers Podcast. I'm your host, Will Gladhart, CMO at the Culture Think Tank. At the Culture Think Tank, we empower leaders with metrics that strengthen culture, drive performance, and return. We're here today to learn about the actions leaders have taken to address organizational change. Today, our guest is David Mandel, Managing Partner at Emerging Ventures Capital. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Will.
Excellent. Well, let's begin by having you share with our audience a bit about yourself, your background, and your organization.
Short version of a long career. Academically, I kind of went full circle. I wanted to be in AI when it wasn't cool to be in AI. And I was an applied math major, a dual major, computer science and applied math, undergraduate back in the late 80s, and then went to graduate school for mathematics. Never finished the doctorate, passed the master's comp, and decided to drop out and go into business because there just wasn't much of a future at the time in that field. Long and behold, where we are today, completely different story. But funny enough, my interest back then was looking at artificial intelligence in particular, although it was taking different forms back then. And I was really interested in the whole computational side and all of that. So it's really interesting to watch the evolution of that. Went into business, had a relatively successful career building and exiting 4 separate businesses around insurance and finance, all in Southern California, where I still live today. They were each different businesses, mostly underwriting businesses where we were balance sheet companies. We took on risk. So I was a lifelong underwriter, whether it was having the second largest non-standard auto insurance carrier in California, which we exited to Kemper in 2014, or having a subprime auto lender and a couple other businesses along the way over about a 28-year career. From that, I started to see some really amazing technologies around 2011, 2012, and coming to us as vendors at the time, and got excited and started to look into that and started doing some angel investing. And it became a passion. And eventually I decided I want to do that full time and exited my businesses that I had at the time and became a full-time investor. And fast forward 2019, partnered, I started a small fund, Emerging Ventures Capital. We're now on our third fund there, our third vehicle that we're investing from that fund. We invest in US and Canada-based B2B tech startups that are using emerging technologies to solve business challenges. I get to spend most of my day talking to the geniuses inventing the future, and that's kind of cool.
I love that. I love that you shared you come full circle from that mathematics and quantitative background to now being back in it many years later in a different version. And congrats again on your third rate capital, outlay for the emerging ventures. That's really exciting. So you've obviously worked with a lot of different leaders, a lot of different individuals. We'll be discussing 3 questions today. As a startup to our conversation, would you share why you believe a healthy culture is critical?
Culture is everything, and we've seen it over and over. I've seen it myself running businesses as an operator, and when culture goes sideways or where culture isn't as toxic in any way, it kills a business very fast. It kills, unmotivated employees or unproductive employees, and it's contagious, it's infectious. If you get one bad apple who's disgruntled, before you know it, you have a whole disgruntled team. So having an aligned, motivated team of people focused on execution is critical. When we're today in my role, when I'm judging potential startups to invest in, what I look for is not necessarily culture, but the founders who eventually will have the right culture or instill the right culture in the team. What I look for in them is that spark and that grit, combination of basically they get stuff done. They are go-getters. They're enthusiastic, passionate, and just no nonsense, moving fast. And they will have that personality where they'll attract others like them around them. And together they will be able to get a lot done very quickly on a smaller budget than their competition. And that's how they'll win.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that. I think that's important for any new leader, but also seasoned leader to hear is that progression and trajectory of culture. So it's been our experience that leaders tend to struggle in 3 key areas: people, profit, or performance. Kind of in your role as mentoring other leaders in the past or present, working with individuals who are growing companies very quickly. Can you identify which of these areas tend to present a challenge for leaders in a growth stage company, or is it a combination thereof?
And that's a softball question because
I
obviously
know.
it's a combination. And they kind of all lead to each other, kind of a chicken and the egg. But if you don't have the right people, then you won't get the performance. And when you don't get the performance, you won't get the profits. So it's hard to say kind of which come first, but I think it's definitely people first, which will then get the performance and which will drive the profits. The profits are last.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting that not everyone picks people first, but sometimes it's all around the profit, and that doesn't necessarily go as well as planned. So, can you identify a challenge that negatively impact an organization that you were leading, mentoring, growing, that specifically kind of either challenged the leaders or was going to have some significant impact on the outcome of the organization?
Yeah, so one of the biggest mistakes I made actually in my role as a leader in the prior life is allowing profits to come first at one point. We had situations, so sometimes bigger isn't always better. And that's a hard lesson to learn, especially when you have a sales mindset in the business
Right.
and we had situation where we were left in what seemed like an amazing situation where a couple of large competitors for various reasons, each different reasons, some internal and some external, stopped writing new business in a certain field and left us swamped with more business than we're like three times the amount of business than we used to have.
Wow.
And initially, we were really excited and we allowed it all in rather than taking any measures to restrict production. We thought, let's just take it, pile it on, right? But then you have to service it. And the continuous strain of getting more business than you can handle is only can be only good for so long. You're straining your people and you can't grow higher fast enough and train people fast enough. At the end, that hurts the culture. That creates a continuously strained, stressed environment, and then performance degrades. And at some point, more is not better. And growing bigger isn't always better. Growing fast is not necessarily good. And that's advice I give today to some startup founders where there's in the venture capital space in particular, there's a culture of grow at any cost, just grow, 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 grow,
Yes.
grow. I really have to step back sometimes and look at their plans and really tell them, it's like, are you sure you want to do that? And my motto now, a lot of times, is that bigger isn't always better. Be careful what you ask for. Really think up twice about is that what you want, or should you stay smaller, grow slower, and have a different culture, a different environment? Because once you go down that path, it's hard to take a step back. If you bring in the kind of investment that is going to expect that kind of growth, then you're getting onto a hamster wheel that's hard to get off of. And I've seen a lot of founders 5 years later say, I wish I never did that.
Yeah, well, it's reflective is always great, but at the same time, I really appreciate that you mention the opportunity cost of high growth, but also high growth without being able to manage that growth effectively in a business. Because as talent moves through the pool, we've had instances of companies we work with that last year there were 40 employees. This year there's 125 employees. People don't know each other. There's things breaking down in the operational and process pieces. There all of a sudden is high turnover they never dealt with before. People are in and out. I think it's really wise that you advise individuals to make that progressive stair step to the next steps. Again, you've worked with a lot of different companies. What was maybe one thing you identified that helped impact a culture positively?
It's from the top down when the founders empower their people to they hire the best people and they empower them and let them do their job and stay out of their way. That's high level, but that's really what it comes down to. If you really want to distill it down, is hire the best people, let them do their job and get out of their way.
Yeah,
And
that's some pretty simple advice, but very effective. So, as we wrap up our conversation today, is there anything that you would like to add or share with fellow leaders from your experience?
for me, success and a startup and even a mature business is all about execution. And as we said in the beginning, and as you alluded to over and over, that's about the people. Hire the best people, let them do what they need to do, and everything else will fall into place. It's less about structure and more about good people doing what they need to do, feeling empowered, and the rest will fall into place and the profits will follow.
That's pretty keeping it simple, but I do like that. So, David, thank you so much for being our guest today on the Leadership Levers podcast. I really appreciate your insights.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you for joining us on the Leadership Levers podcast. Find all our Leadership Levers episodes on the Culture Think Tank website at www.theculturethinktank.com or listen on your favorite streaming platform. We'd love to hear from you about the challenges you have faced as a leader. Tune in weekly as we invite leaders to share their experiences in strengthening culture and performance, one action at a time.